Hello, everybody. It is 5:54 p.m. Central Time on the 30th of November, 2020. It's Monday here in the United States. I've got some big-time breaking news for everybody. A few major things have happened, seismically speaking. We're going to start really quick just by telling you multiple deep earthquakes have struck, one being a deep 6.4, and also another large earthquake has struck, a 6.3, shallower, down below South America, and the deep earthquake was on the west-northwest side of the Pacific up here, next to Russia and northwest of Japan. Big, deep earthquakes mean shallower, larger earthquakes are due in the areas surrounding where the deep earthquakes are. To top it all off, this big news that I've got for you, another 50,000 foot high blast has occurred at a different volcano over here in Indonesia. This is on top of the previous 50,000 foot high blast that happened over here at Luwotolo volcano in Indonesia 2 days ago. Let's go pull up the info on the blast first. So we'll go to the Volcanic Ash Advisory Center, and hopefully you guys will be able to see what I'm looking at here on the screen. So continuous eruption up to 20,000 feet. Semeru original blast 50,000 from the Darwin Volcanic Ash Advisory Center coming out of Australia. Warnings for pilots up to 50,000. Again, Mount Semeru. And we don't normally see big blasts like this. Certainly not two of them within 2 days of each other at two different volcanoes. So we've got something going on over in Indonesia. And I'm just going to pull it up here. Semeru, East Java, Indonesia. And show you where the volcano is in relation to the other volcano that just erupted. So here's the volcano that just put off a new 50,000 foot high blast, Mount Semeru in eastern Java, Indonesia. The other volcano all the way over here, Luwotolo. So what I'd like to do is just measure between the two and get a rough mileage. We'll just do a point-to-point measurement from this volcano all the way over to Luwotolo volcano. And this will tell us the general area that's moved, where we have two 50,000 foot high blasts happening within 2 days of each other. Here is Luwotolo volcano. We are 724 miles west of Luwotolo with our new blast. And I would like to show it to you on the USGS plate boundary map. It might make a little bit more sense here if we look on the plate boundaries. So the first blast, 50,000 foot high, happened right here along the red line next to East Timor. The second blast has happened here next to this red line. They're both connected. They're both on the same plate boundary. It's just separated by a continent almost, or at least a few hundred miles across Indonesia. Now, I brought up that there was a deep earthquake. Look where the deep earthquake is. The deep earthquake is all the way on the north side of Japan. And the reason this matters is, well, I've explained this before, but I'll show everybody again. With the deep earthquakes, what I think is going on, down in the magma, down below the plates, we're getting concentric waves that come in on each other and compress. But since a fluid doesn't compress, or at least not much, it goes up. It forces the force and the power up out of the wave, up into whatever is nearby. In this case, it goes up into the air and dissipates back down into itself. But you can imagine this hammering in on the underside of the plate. And then look where the deep earthquake is. It's in relation to Japan, for instance. Now we'll go on the USGS plate boundary map. Look at this. See where the plate boundary goes. It splits at Japan and goes to the northwest up through Russia, and it goes to the northeast up into the Aleutian Island chain up in Alaska. So a big deep earthquake here means we have to warn everybody back behind the deep earthquake, if you will, down to where the two arrows are in Japan. And we have to warn everybody out in front of where the two arrows are, over into the Aleutians. In addition to all of it, look at our arrows going to the west. This is like the perfect point for a deep earthquake to strike, to have an effect all the way over here to Europe, have an effect all the way over here to the United States, and have an effect all the way back down here into Asia itself in the West Pacific. In other words, this is a deep earthquake that could affect all of us over the next 7 to 10 days. Maybe even longer. But look at the shell that I just turned on here. It's a function on Earthquake 3D. We'll wait for this to refresh. Look where the shell spreads out to. The shell spreads out to the central Aleutians. The shell spreads out over to Mongolia, central China, and the shell spreads all the way down south of Taiwan, back across the Izu Ridge. So all of those areas, on all sides, think of this like a bubble of force or power coming up on the underside of the blade, and that middle point, where it's coming up, is going to spread out in all directions. So it's coming up right here, should go over to the east, go over to the west, go down to the south, and if you follow this actually up and around, this actually connects over to the North Mid-Atlantic Ridge, which could then affect Greenland and Alaska. This is a big deal. Now, this is the Big Deep earthquake. Now, on the opposite side of the planet, what we would call an antipode, but not an exact antipode, just an opposite side of the planet, a 6.3. This is at the Chile-Argentina-Bolivia border region. This is 144 kilometers deep. So it's another deep earthquake on top of, or another big earthquake on top of the deep earthquake. So multiple sixes have struck. A new 50,000 foot high blast on top of the previous 50,000 foot high blast, and I'm not even done yet. Check this out. A new rare 4.0 earthquake struck in Germany. Achtung! Erdbeben. That's, I think, German for earthquake. Look, I mean, what can we say about this? Let's get the coordinates from the Europeans. This is a big deal, too, because, look, it's a rare earthquake in a location in Europe that doesn't normally get hit much. On top of the sixes, on top of the deep earthquake, on top of the 250,000 foot high blast. Now, we all know solar is going through the roof again. Well, not really. We don't have any X-class flares or anything like that yet. But M-class flares and solar wind picking up, coronal holes. The sun's back, baby. And we know that because it goes in 10-year cycles. And we were at a high, a 10-year high, 10 years ago when Japan happened. When Japan happened 10 years ago, we started on this downturn where that was kind of like the pinnacle high, and then we go down for 10 years and we hit that minimum point. Now that we've hit the minimum point, or we're at the minimum point, we're now going to start going back up solar-wise in the next 10 years. And then 10 years from now, we'll be at the height of it, so to speak. So it goes ebbs and flows in 10-year cycles. Not 5 and 5, I'm talking 10 years down, and then you start back up on a 10-year cycle back up. Now, look where the earthquake is. It's down here in South Germany. Munich over to the east. Bern, Switzerland over to the west. But isn't there something else over here? Again, I don't know exactly where the CERN ring is around over in Geneva. I think it's somewhere over here in western Switzerland. So we're way far away from CERN. I don't have any marked volcanic fields here either. We have to go all the way over to the east to get to one at the Sheb Basin. So it's not related to that. That doesn't mean that there aren't ancient volcanic systems that are here. It just means I do not have them place marked. And I don't have very much information on the German volcanism of the past. Now, Mossinger Bergtrus. Good luck trying to pronounce any of that. So it's a rare earthquake on the craton interior is what I would call this. And we're really at the fold or bend of the plate on the north side of the Alps, which we know become compressed going across Europe. But it's a sign that Europe's under great stress as well. Now you'll notice there's no earthquakes reported across all of mainland Russia and all of mainland China, right up to their borders. And I mean quite literally right up to their borders. I don't know about all that. That might be some kind of weird political thing going on, where we're not getting the info or we're not putting it out. Now to recap, again, let's just sum it up. A new big, deep earthquake has happened below the Northwest Pacific. And look where the arrows point out to. In all directions from this, again, it's like it's perfectly placed to go to the west, to the east, and technically back down to the south as well, backflow. And we have to warn everybody in Japan, out to the central Aleutians, all the way over into Mongolia, China, central China, even going down. Again, here, let's turn back on the shell. Look where it goes through in China. These are heavily populated areas in China. Same with down in Taiwan. Same with out here on the Izu Ridge next to Guam. This is Guam right here. We have U.S. military installation right here on the edge of the perimeter. We have to warn each of these locations. It's not really that many locations that need to be warned. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, Maybe if you want to include the rural, non-populated islands out here in the Aleutians, that would be 5 spots around it that I would watch in particular. And the ones that are populated, we have Taiwan, Japan, China. Then you get out here into rural Siberia or something, and there might be small towns, but the chances of them even getting the warning if I put it out right now are very slim. So I do know that I have viewers across Taiwan and in Japan. I know I have viewers down here in Guam at the military installations, and I know I've got viewers up in Alaska. So let everybody know up there in the next 7 to 10 days, look, around where this deep earthquake is, we have to also pay attention over to Europe. This is going to go out over to Asia, but it's not going to stop there. It's going to continue on all the way over. And with a big deep 6, we have to look for 7s. 7s to pop back off. It's been a minute since we've had any 7.0 range activity. We have to go back several weeks to get that 7 over here in Greece. And then we can also talk about the earthquake activity, the other deep earthquakes that are taking place. But I have to talk about this really quick too. There were deep earthquakes down below Argentina, and now we're dealing with 6s interior to the plate. And look where it is. Hold on one more second. Let's just get that on there. There it is. Look where it is. It's right on our letter D. But that's where the deep earthquakes were. So now a shallower, larger earthquake has suddenly popped up here right next to where the deep earthquakes have taken place in Argentina. Overall, that's a lot of activity to happen in about an hour's time. Maybe 2 hours if you include when the eruption first started at Semeru. So all this just happened in the past couple hours, guys. This isn't some long, full day-long update. This is just my emergency alert update. 2 big earthquakes, one of them is deep, and a new 50,000-foot-high blast, which now there's been enough time that we could probably go over to good old Twitter, as we call it here, and let's go and see if Semeru is on the list showing the eruption. 50,000 foot. 23 seconds ago, 1 minute ago, that's not it. They might not even have it. Do they have it? Oh yeah, they've got it. Look at this. This is from the actual webcam they have on the volcano. Now, it looks like it's almost nighttime, or maybe that's just the glow from the blast. Normally, the blasts don't have glow unless there's some lava with it. But that's huge. Right there, that's just the base of the column. You can imagine how high up that goes. 50,000 feet. It's going to look just like the one the other day. Okay, Semeru, what's this one?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ini masih mengepul. Ini ada salah.
Okay, some kind of report on Semeru, but not the actual blast. Again, I don't know if we're going to get any of these eruptions. From Semeru, it might be a little bit more difficult. There's the other shot from the CCTV Semeru Sriti camera. "44 minutes ago, I don't know what's going on there, but it's steaming of some kind and it's flowing. Ash? Maybe that's at the crater? I don't know. Maybe that was getting ready to blow. Oh, I bet. Look, they got a bunch of tourists there. I can't read this. Maybe I should try and translate it. No, there's no translate option. There's a bunch of tourists there. Oh, for crying out loud, they're all going there to inspect it. It's steaming. It's putting off something. It's not doing what it normally does. Oh, no. And then a 50,000-foot eye blast happens. Here, they got video of this. Hold on. Yeah, severe fumarole activity. Something's going on there. They can tell something's going on. You got tourists there. Because it normally puts off smaller blasts, maybe 12,000 foot high at the most. You might see 10 or 12,000. Let's go back over to the Volcanic Ash Advisory Center. I hope that's from another time, guys. I hope that video is from another day. If there are people there that they're that close to the crater as it's steaming and outgassing, I don't know. Not going to guess. I also mentioned Tellico volcano. Let's just show you where that is because that's back on the list. Right down here, see where the two rings overlap? This is on Nicaragua, Tellico volcano or Tellica, right there in the middle. Then, where the two rings overlap here in Colombia, Nevado del Ruiz volcano is back alive. So, Tellica or Telica, Nevados del Ruiz, Popocate Batal, Sabancaya, all erupting on this side. And then we get over here and we have two 50,000-foot high blasts over in Indonesia in the past 2 days, both of which are pretty much right in the middle of this whole mess, right here and right here. So again, Eastern Java, where the rings overlap here, and where the rings overlap here on Luwutolo. It's unprecedented for me to be on here twice in 2 days talking about two different 50,000-foot high blasts at two different volcanoes in the same country, side by side to each other. That lets you know something's going on down below the plate boundary, which I've already talked about at length with the deep earthquakes that have taken place here and over to the east. And technically up to the north too, where our other letter D is, up by Japan. But now we're dealing with major deep earthquake activity. When we see something like this anywhere on the planet, we know to get ready for 7.0 range activity to be coming in up and from this and going out and away from this. And we see which way the arrows point out and away from this, and getting back to the USGS plate boundary map one more time, out and away from where this big orange circle is. And look which ways it goes. I would say the spot to the north all the way up into Alaska, that's a fourth spot that only I'm going to watch. I don't recall many big, deep earthquakes up here this far in on the plate boundary. Normally they're up here in Kamchatka. So to have it back here, well, we have to watch it. I will watch it. I'm not going to issue any warning. Let's just show you which way it goes. It goes following this mountain range. See how it's brown versus green? Now follow that up here, and you can follow it across. And you could say it goes over to the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Whoops. Follow it across over to this, east of the letter X, which then comes across this way and back down into North America. So follow the ridge on the east side of the X. We go back down to the mountain range and come back down to our deep earthquake. That is the path. Think of this like a mountain road that never gets used. And that I have never seen anybody go up the road. And I sit down there at the junction. Not a gatekeeper or anything, but just sitting there, keeping track. I live right there. I sit on my front porch and watch the traffic go by. And nobody ever goes up that road. So in this case, we have to watch and see. Does it come back out on the other side? Do they come back out on the other side? Or is it going to strictly stick to where our arrows are, which is the observed path over the last 10 years? But then again, like I said, we don't get many deep earthquakes right here. They're normally over at RD on the east side by Kamchatka. So I'm watching myself to see what happens on that. The rest of it is pretty much textbook at this point. We watch over to the east, down to the south, and following the arrows over towards central China. But it's not going to stop there. That's just the first stop on this. It's going to spread out all the way over to Europe, and it's going to spread out all the way over to the United States, for certain, in the next 7 to 10 days. And we will see a huge increase go over into Alaska, and we'll see a huge increase go over into Europe. The only question about this now is the huge increase going to actually pop up back down here too, next to Taiwan and Guam, going through Japan? Or will it follow the main flow where the arrows point and strictly go east and west? Going against the flow only happens when we get a big push from underneath. Again, think of this like a giant upwelling bubble of pressure. And that giant bubble is coming in on the underside of the plate. And what do you think that bubble of pressure is going to do to the red lines around it that are cracks in the plate? If that bubble is coming up on the underside of the plate, and these red lines are breaks in the plate that start at the surface and go all the way down through the plate to the magma down below where the pressure is coming up from, what do you think happens when you put pressure on the underside of something that's broken? It's going to seek out those break points. It's a basic, fundamental principle of common physics. But this is on a grand scale. And the amount of force coming in on one of these big, deep earthquakes like this, a lot of people ask me, where do I think it's coming from? Well, that gets into the core of the Earth. And what's down at the core of the Earth? It's not a big ball of metal. Big balls of metal don't produce large magnetic fields unless it's a giant magnet itself, or unless it's rotating really fast and it's got magnets around it. So if it's not a giant ball of metal, what can produce large electromagnetic fields that go way out into space and have a VLF reverberation effect, if you will, or a feedback loop effect that can come up and cause earthquakes? VLF, very low frequency or ultra low frequency, that gets into the core of the Earth. But I don't want to get into a lecture on that or any kind of confusing talk on plasma at the core of the Earth. Just understand that the core of the Earth is rotating, and it's rotating at a different speed than the rest of the entire planet. It's going much faster, and it's a rotating ball of, well, you could think of it like ball lightning, if you will, but way hotter and not lightning. But it's powered by electricity. The electricity comes from charged particles from the sun, and hence we have the big solar event going on right now. Events starting to take place. M-class flares, large coronal holes, strong solar wind, CMEs, coronal mass ejections. Okay, when those happen and they face Earth, or if they happen and they're big enough and they're even just anywhere on the sun, can have a magnetic effect, charged particle effect, coming towards Earth through the spiral arms that trap those charged particles that come from the sun. I don't know if you've ever seen the Enlil spiral, but let me just show it to you. ENLIL spiral. The WSA Enlil model. Let's see if it still comes up on this. There it is. You guys might see this. Is this going to rotate? Here, let me hit play. So Earth is where the yellow is. The sun is at the center. But Earth, let's see, what do they have Earth marked as? Do they have the Earth key even on here? They don't. But solar wind, again, this is the sun, and these are the arms extending off the sun, and each planet traveling behind the sun, technically, rotating around it, but behind it. The sun out like a leader of the pack. Here, you know what? Let's see. Solar spiral. Ah, look at that. They think I'm trying to buy something. Orbit. There we go. Look at this. Look at this graphic. There's the sun out in front, and these are how the planets are rotating technically around the sun. Do you see that? That's the actual rotation of the planets. So most people think of the planets just rotating in a disk around the sun. That's not true. We're moving through space-time, and the sun is out in front of us. So why does that matter? That gets us back to the Enlil spiral. Those spiral arms are charged particles, and those charged particles can intersect the Earth. And when the charged particles intersect the Earth, they get captured by the Earth's magnetic field and taken to ground. And when they go to ground, they don't just go into the ground. They carry on down through the crust, down to the core of the Earth, and power that plasma torch, if you will. A plasma torch, hot enough to melt anything. So it's amazing what's going on right now. A 4.0 in Germany, a big, deep 6.4, a 6.3 down in Chile, a 50,000-foot high blast again today from a different volcano, on top of the previous 50,000-foot high blast. I haven't even talked about the earthquakes in the United States, and I think I should probably do that in a separate update. But just really quick, let me just show you what's going on here in the U.S. We have a bunch of threes going on down the West Coast. Not that much, just threes. Something big is getting ready to happen up here in the Pacific Northwest. And by the way, a 5.5 came in right in the middle of the Aleutian Island chain, in the middle of our warned area. That 5.5 came rolling in last night. One final thing I'd like you to all take away from this. Here, let me show you this. The Pacific Northwest Seismic Network has updated their tremor map. And look, today, the 30th, nothing on there. Let's go back to yesterday. Look, 115. 115 tremors. Now, it was out for a day, so I don't know what happened. Let's go back to the 28th and see if it shows anything. 23. So it finally did update. Apparently, there was some kind of outage. It went, the last time we checked was 43. Then the outage happened, but look, 23 are reported, Northern California and Central Oregon. Then we move forward to yesterday, and 100 of them are back. And this time they're up at Portland. Or between Salem and Portland in Northwest Oregon. Just a little handful down in Southwest Oregon, right at the California border. So the tremors are back. There's no doubt about it. And there's 100 of them. I would consider that not exactly stopping, wouldn't you? If you've been a viewer of mine for a long time, you know what I'm talking about. So the tremors are still carrying on, which means technically the slow slip is still carrying on. And as the plate slips and the rest of the plate's going into overdrive, it's a bad combo. It means there's the potential of large earthquake activity between Alaska and the United States on the Juan de Fuca fracture zone, out in the ocean. When I say large, I mean it, so it goes up above 6, most likely. But I'm watching here first, so for my U.S. viewers, look, I'm going to be doing multiple updates over the next several days. We're dealing with multiple 50,000-foot-high blasts over in the West Pacific. That alone warrants multiple updates over the next several days. But with everything else that's going on, the spreads of 5s, and now, I'd like to point out one other thing. The forecast for this week, without issuing a forecast, in my update a couple days ago, I told you guys, we're going to be going back up to 6s around the plate. And now here we are. We have 2 of them on opposite sides of the planet, in addition to all the mid-range 5s. So it is a big deal what's going on right now. The 50,000-foot-high blasts are unprecedented for me to report on them back-to-back, same country, 2 days apart, 2 different volcanoes, one of which hadn't erupted in 8 years. That was Luatolo. And Semeru erupts semi-regularly, but never like this, or, well, I shouldn't say never, but not normally at a 50,000-foot level. Add in a 4.0 over in Germany, just to let you know something's going on. So I will be here, and I'll be watching close, and with this big guy up here in the Northwest Pacific, get ready for it around Japan, over into China, and over into the Aleutians. Let's hope that by the time it spreads out, it will drop down 1 step. But we're dealing with the potential of 7s, and it's going to most likely be 2 of them, not 1, on the plate boundaries going up to the north, over to the east, and on the plate going over into China, which is like they hardly ever get big activity like that. So it could go up into 7 and it could go into China. My God, man. All right, well, I've got my coffee brewed and I will be back at a moment's notice. We will get a full update out and a forecast out for the whole planet, most likely tomorrow. Keeps getting pushed back now. I would do it now, but this is just too much going on right now. I got to wait and see what happens with the volcanic blast. But I'll just tell you, when I see multiple 50,000-foot-high blasts and a big, deep earthquake up below Russia and Japan, and they're separated themselves by a few thousand miles, that's letting me know that we're right on the edge or threshold of something major going on that's above what we normally see. And I say major, I don't exaggerate, I mean it, so it could go up into that very large level. How large is very large? Well, I consider large 7.0. I consider very large 8.0. So we're flirting around with the potential of going up to 8s. I have to get a forecast together in the next day so that we can incorporate that into the forecast. So I'm back to the drawing board tonight. Have to reassess everything in light of this new deep earthquake, by the way, so that's going to take a little bit to reforecast. But you can expect an update from me for forecast-wise by tomorrow. And for the meantime, enjoy this wonderful view of the full moon. Look at that. It's like a whitish light tonight. It's really an intense full moon. So full moon, weird stuff happens. You know, that some people also talk to me about the full moon and does it have an effect on earthquake activity? Not that I know of. But the distance of the moon can. So if the moon is really close to Earth, or if it's really far away at its furthest point away. I've noticed when it's at its furthest point away, there's an earthquake effect, like it's a pull on Earth as the moon is starting to get pulled back in. And as it gets really close, they call those not just a full moon, you get a blue moon and a really close to Earth moon. Those have an effect. What effect? Magnitude-wise, I don't have a scale on it yet. I only started paying attention to the moon thing a few years ago, actually. So word up and much love. I would encourage you to have an earthquake plan if you live on the west coast of the United States. With this going on internationally, or if you live over in Japan, I know you've heard this 1,000 times. You need to have an earthquake plan. You need to know what to do when an earthquake strikes. Take shelter immediately underneath a table or a desk. Something that'll get you out of the way of falling objects. And They don't recommend being in a door anymore, door frame, for many reasons. Sometimes they're not structural, they don't support anything. Secondly, you might be in the way of somebody trying to exit. Now, that gets into should you exit? Well, the USGS says yes and no. On their website, it says yes, you should exit if the structure is not sufficient. So if the structure is falling, obviously you're going to try and make your way to a door. I would recommend going out right after the earthquake, after things are done falling. If you're not confident in the structure but it's still standing, first, of course, take shelter. Secondly, exit the structure. You need to have a place outside that you've pre-designated that's far away from power lines, that's far away from anything that can hurt you that you know of. And make sure the people in your household also know where to go. One more time. A 50,000-foot high blast just happened at Mount Semeru, on top of the 50,000-foot high blast that just happened at Luwutolo. Both are in Indonesia in the West Pacific. Now, you might think that might not affect you. It's a world away. But this is just a sign of what we're going to be dealing with in the next several days as the energy transfers out and away from where the blasts are happening in Indonesia and all the deep earthquakes are happening, from Fiji to Indonesia to Japan. And so from Fiji, in case you don't know where Fiji is, from here, where our deep earthquakes are, over all the way 5,000 miles over to Indonesia, where we had our deep earthquakes 2 days ago, all the way another 5,000 miles or more, maybe 8,000, all the way up here to north of Japan at the Russia border with Japan. That whole area from Japan to Fiji to Indonesia just had a displacement take place down below it, and it's going to spread out and away from it. It is no coincidence that that middle point between all three sets of deep earthquakes, that middle point is right here, where our two 50,000-foot high blasts just happened at Semeru and Luwutolo, 800 miles apart themselves. Okay, I will be back if anything else goes down. One more time, be prepared. Don't be scared. You need to be prepared. It'll take some of the edge off of the fear and replace it with vigilance. It won't fully remove the shock that might happen if a big earthquake hits or any disaster hits. But being prepared for something, at least, like I said, takes the edge off of it. So develop an emergency kit. Change of clothes, set of shoes. Food and water for a couple days. Flashlight, batteries, first aid kit. Come on, sanitation. You're supposed to have this stuff already, right? So put it into a bag. Have it ready to go. You know, what does a pair of shoes by the side of your bed cost you? Well, I mean, the cost of the original shoes, yes, but you should already have the shoes. So why not put a pair of shoes by the side of your bed? So if the earthquake hits in the middle of the night and there's broken things across the floor, and the power is out, you can just reach and fumble for your shoes and find them. So you don't have to go try and maneuver in broken items with bare feet or socks or whatever you're going to be. Most people don't sleep in their shoes, do they? So I'm just reminding you. I know I get a little condescending sounding, but I mean, it's better for that. Again, I'd rather sound a little whatever and annoy you a little bit than have a roof on your head. At least you'll remember it, right? That guy on YouTube is really talking down to me. Let me get a sip of my coffee. I'm going to be up all night. This is going to be a wild few days. This next 7 to 10 days is going to be wild. Get ready for it. And I'm going to pause this, save it, and upload it to YouTube. Peace out, guys.